So a couple of episodes ago, we talked about the film Twilight, and it had a supporting actor, M. Emmett Walsh. And Robert Ebert said that anytime he's in a movie, it's not entirely a bad movie. I'm going to correlate that with another person, Thelma Ritter. Anytime she's in a movie as a supporting role, it's never a bad movie. Kind of like, she was in Rear Window and a bunch of other stuff. So, of course, this is the movie that she got Oscar nominated for, one of her six. And, of course, we're going to talk about it, directed by Sam Fuller.
Yeah.
My classic, my favorite, this is the first time Kyle's watched it, it's Pick Up on South Street.
Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatefilmReviews.com.
Hi, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals to tell us what movies we should review in the future. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about a film that just turned, 60? 70? 70 years old. It's Pick Up on South Street.
All right. So, while delivering an envelope for her ex-boyfriend, Candy has her wallet stolen by pickpocket Skip McCoy. Unbeknownst to either of them, it contains communist spy intelligence.
There you go, yeah.
And she's being followed by government agents for quite some time. Candy and the agents separately search for Skip as the thief stays out of public view with the deadly information.
Okay, so I do have a copy of it. It's bootleg everywhere. I don't know if 20th Century Fox is out hounding for films that are 70 years old, but you can find pretty much anywhere accessible. I think it's in other areas of streaming, but also there's some bootleg copies.
It's streaming on Plex right now, although
Yeah.
I would suggest if that's your only option, watch it, but I will say that they did some weird cuts to some of the exchanges where
don't
there's
tell
some
Sam
weird
that.
zooming and stuff like that going on. If I were you, I'd check out the brilliant recreation on Criterion. Wait for one of the sales and go pick up your copy on Blu-ray.
Okay, so it's directed by Sam Fuller. Sam Fuller is one of those things that he's lived almost like 4 different versions of life. He used to be a journalist for like tabloid newspapers, and that's how he got his writing and he started as a teenager, almost started as 12 years old as a copy boy. Then he enlisted in the army. He was at the beach on D-Day with the army of Big Red One. I mean, he would make his self-autobiographical movie in the 80s, Big Red One. And then after that, he would be a novelist and then a screenwriter. And then he got in cahoots with Darryl Zanuck. Darryl Zanuck loved him and would basically, after Sam Fuller made Steel Helmet, Darryl Zanuck basically contracted him for 7 movies. And Sam had direct line right to Darryl Zanuck. He didn't have to go through any bureaucracies or channels. He'd just go right to Darryl, and Darryl would pretty much greenlight anything he would do.
Yeah. Well, you have someone who really cares about you as a filmmaker if they're willing to stand up against J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI.
Yes, we have to get
Hoover
that
was
story
notably
right.
not a fan of Fuller or most of his work, and really not a fan of this movie. Because he foresaw that Skip McCoy had some like anti-American language in the film. Really not that much. And in fact, the film is very America forward, in its overall scope. And yet, Hoover, who had, all sorts of issues with like single pieces of dialogue, would fight Zanuck, and Zanuck would say, "No, I'm sticking by my filmmaker." That takes a lot of chutzpah.
Right. So naturally, Sam came about filmmaking as a kind of a circumnavigate of doing a bunch of other stuff. He's a self-taught writer. He's very much of the tabloid pulp magazine front, which is it's very pulpy, very upfront, very crass. There's nothing really. He has a style, but it's not really glossy. Things are very undercurrent. He likes the streetwalkers.
Yeah.
He likes the subcultures of investigation. And here he picks 2 kind of people. It's based on a story based on Dwight Taylor, and that's not really true. It's almost lifted like that's a kind of a sample of what he wanted to do, because with Dwight Taylor, it's more of this espionage thing.
Yeah.
Where Sam Fuller really wanted to do the street version of it.
Yeah, it's espionage from the viewpoint of the street rat,
Right.
And it's interesting that you point out that Samuel Fuller was very very pulpy in his writing, and I kept thinking to myself, wait, you're telling me the guy that created the character named Skip McCoy is pulpy? And I was like, no, of course not.
But if you understand, I think if you like Tarantino, you like that things. He likes even, and he's pretty open. He was inspired by Sam Fuller, and you think that like you look at this movie like this is independent kind of a thing. No, he worked at 20th Century Fox.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is like big production.
I wonder how much. I mean, I'm sure Fox paid the money, made the film, but I have to wonder too if they were kind of concerned just because he was on the fringe of the filmmaking circuit. We're not going to give him a ton of money.
No,
he kind of felt like Kevin Smith or Tarantino in their early part of their career would have been, where they were like, oh, thank God someone's giving me money to make my vision. It's not going to be a lot because they don't trust it yet.
Right. And Sam's one of the first people to realize, hey, if you finish filming your movie ahead of schedule and you keep it under budget and your films make movie, guess what? They'll keep you.
Yeah.
And usually have no friction on set. They'll keep you.
Yeah, the lower the cost, the lower the risk, and if you can turn even half a profit, then you're seen in the eyes as some sort of messiah figure.
Yeah. So it was a 20-day shoot at $780,000.
I can see it though, because there's not that many sets.
No.
There's like maybe 5 significant locations in the film.
Yeah.
I could see being able to shoot this thing out pretty quick. It's mostly characters talking, so there's not heavy action set pieces or anything like that. I have to imagine the toughest scene is probably the opening scene because of all the extras.
Right, and
space.
The opening scene is in the trolley car.
Yeah.
I wonder if that trolley car is stationed on the movie. I don't think it's on.
No, I think you can even see it nowadays in most other films where they do that,
did like Midnight
they get
Meat Train.
people on the sides that just push the cart back and forth to elicit the feeling of movement.
Then you got like a box making the sounds and everything. But I think it's an in-studio shot of inside the trailer. And it's shot really intensely. There's no dialogue, but you actually know what's going on. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's... That was kind of the thing, though. In the 50s, you didn't have to go for as much realism as you have to go for today. So if someone saw the trolley car shuffling and they were like, that's not really there, it doesn't really matter as much back then. I think we place too much of a hold on reality in today's filmmaking, where if something isn't 100% realistic, we like throw our carrots and tomatoes at the screen. And it's kind of something nicer to go back to a simpler time where you have people pushing on a trolley car to keep the vision of movement.
With the sticks, right.
Yeah.
With the sticks, right. Yeah. So Sam Fuller, wanting to do this movie, he had characters. A lot of the characters in his movie are inspired by people he knew as sources when he worked in journalism. And so you have Skip McCoy, who's a pickpocketer. And he's not somebody who would call a theft or somebody, because these people who pickpocket consider themselves artists. Mm-hmm.
Of course they do.
Right. They have the course, and it talks about it everybody has their different way of doing things. Mm-hmm. Their trademark, their signature. And it's more insulting if you steal my signature rather than getting arrested.
Yeah.
He's not a murderer. He's not out hurting on. He's just trying to lift up a couple bucks just to survive the day.
Yeah. That's indicative of like the post crash of 29. I think we felt reverberations of that throughout, and then we get hit with a World War II and the reverberations of that. I think it was just economically, there's 2 types of filmmaking during this time. There's the guy comes home from his 8-hour job to get a martini and sit down with his wife who cooks him dinner, or there's the guys who are struggling, that are trying to make ends meet, and it's like there's no middle ground. Your film is either about the street life or it's about the everything's perfect, leave it to Beaver.
Very much Sam Fuller, very much in line with something like Elmer Leonard. Like, if anybody has a real job, it's either going to be a cop or a lawyer. Everybody else has shady jobs and doing everything illegal.
Yeah.
So after Sam Fuller wrote this, he primarily is a self-taught writer, and corresponding with Darryl Zanuck, he gets a lot to auditions, right? He can have pretty much anybody he wants. He fought hard to have Marilyn Monroe for this movie. Darryl really fought for it, but Marilyn didn't want to play a prostitute at the time. She didn't want to do that. And then just through seeing Gene Peters going through auditions, and you could see it in the movie. Gene Peters, not very polished person, very attractive and beautiful, but not very polished, very New York street kind of dialogue and street kind of attitude.
Yeah,
very bullish, very doesn't mind being a bully, and not very polished. I think fits the role here.
Yeah, and I think she's got a way that she carries herself where it's like she could survive on the streets as long as she has.
Yeah.
I
but
think
she doesn't have the smarts to survive on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also stands to reason why she's got an ex-boyfriend that she's still helping with tasks, or why she's willing to take the blame for being pickpocketed and go and solve it instead of just kind of washing her hands of the whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah, and you can see it without even saying much that she's not sophisticated enough to hold on a real job, but she's not smart enough to be on her own. And she has to leech onto other people doing other tasks and job because she probably not making a lot of money being a prostitute either, because she probably punch him in the face or something.
And there's some people that choose sex work as an opportunity, but for a lot of other people it does end up being something that, like, well, this is something I'm capable of doing to make some money. And I think that's kind of the more of the character of Candy that we see here, is that she's someone who, I think she has the potential to do something else with her life, but she doesn't have the belief system to do it and the sophistication to do something else with her life. And now it's kind of, she's gone down this path so far. What do you do?
So after this movie, you wonder what the heck happened to Jean Peters. You almost think that this is her launch pad for stardom. Well, she dated Howard Hughes at the time, and they had a nasty breakup, and Howard Hughes pretty much blacklisted her through not getting hired everybody. They had a nasty breakup, and there's a reason why you don't see her much in other films. To round up the trifecta, you have Thelma Ritter playing Mo, who's kind of a street peddler. She will do crooked things, but she knows, like, she would rat on Skip, but Skip knows, hey, that's part of your life. I'm not going to take it personal.
Yeah.
You know.
And as long as you got a good buck for it, you know?
Right, yeah.
And I think Thelma Ritter to me, or I guess Mo, the character of Mo, felt to me like someone like Morgan Freeman's Red from the Shawshank Redemption, just not in the slammer, and she's a woman, but she can get you things. She can get you the answer you need as
at
long
a price,
as you got the money.
right? Cost of living's gone up.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Ritter's is like 6 Academy Award nominations. This is actually an interesting fact about her, is that she had 4 in a row.
Yes.
There was All About Eve in 1950, The Mating Season in 51, With a Song in My Heart in 52, and then this film in 53. So this was the 4th consecutive acting nomination that she got. I don't know of anyone that's ever done that, and I don't know that we ever would have that again, because that's quite a run, and movies take longer nowadays, so I don't know if that can be replicated again.
But she actually was from New York, so she has the perfect, already ready establishment of, she knows the mannerisms and traits of being the street person. But anything in price. She'll sell ties, she'll sell information.
Yeah.
But it's that understanding of what you are for, that even though she'll rat on Skip and they know each other, that he won't take it personal. Hey, it's part of life, Yeah, you got to make a buck. She's got to eat too. I think that's what he says in the movie. Hey, she's got to eat too,
Yeah. Well, it feels influential of something that we'd see 4 decades later, and even just a film like Heat, where you have Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. One's a criminal, one's a cop, and they have that kind of mutual respect, but they know that when the heat comes and they're going to have to face off, it's just part of the job. Like that's part of the life that we both chose. Is the respect level is there, but we're not always going to be moving in the same direction. So
when we get to on review, I just want to ask him, because I watch it, how bad do you think Jean Peters' dress smelled after the end of that movie? Because it gets beer spilled on.
I mean, if there's one costume they probably had replicas of, it's got to be that one, because no one else is going through the crap she's going through in that.
And she's getting beer on it, spit it on, blood, and then it's sweated, and she's sweating, and it's like, I think every time I watch the movie, it's like, that had to go through the laundry twice, maybe. Yeah. So, up next is our review of Sam Fuller's Pickup on South Street. I think you know my flavor. I picked this movie. It's one of my favorite Sam Fuller's. I consider it his masterpiece. I love anything Sam Fuller does. And I've just watched it again, and I watched it last time. I watched it just a couple months ago. So it's always constantly on my psycho rewatchability. But this is Kyle's first time seeing it. I would like to just interested in what he has to say about it.
I liked it quite a bit. What I will say about it is, and this always sounds like a slight when I say it about movies, but know that this is a strength. I wish we could go back to a time where people had 80-minute movies, because it's one of the film's strengths is that it doesn't overindulge itself in minutia that's not important. And people always say, like, well, no film is ever long enough if it's good, and it's like, no, there's a limit to that. I talked about this film, The Inspection, that came out last year that was 90 minutes long, and I was like, it's nice to have a prestige film that's 90 minutes long. It's nice to have a crime thriller in some ways that's 80 minutes, because it's all killer, no filler. I respect that so much. It's kind of why one of my favorite horror movies is The Wolfman. That's 62 minutes. It doesn't have time for bullcrap.
And I think that's Sam Fuller's nature, where he comes from. Tabloids. You got to get the information out fast. You got to sell it hard.
Yep.
And there's not time to dance around and be cute about it. This is the way it, And I think he did movies like that. Has one of the most sad deaths you ever see on film with Thelma Ritter's death.
She's the standout character in the film.
Yeah,
Without
she has
a
the best
doubt,
lines.
she is. Yeah, she's the best line. She's the best written character. I think she's the one that,
Listen, Tiger.
if you're gonna give fault to the film, it's definitely there is a lack of her presence when she dies. Like it's a noticeable hole in the narrative.
And you don't see
is that I
it.
want her back.
I know. He doesn't cut, and that's the thing. You don't see her dead. He cuts to the record.
Yeah.
And the blast is so loud it pops the needle.
Mm-hmm.
Which is so like, oh my god. And
Which
then,
might have been out of importance to like I can't afford a violent scene or else I can't put one in because the film is this is before the rating system, before things like that. Things had to pass or fail and be released or not released. So there could be a method of convenience to it, but it's also a clever way for Sam Fuller to show without showing. We talk show don't tell. This is showing without showing. We see the record and that's a representation of Mao.
But then the whole speech, like, I don't get a fancy funeral after all. That's what she's been dying for. She wants the plot.
Yeah.
And you could just see it like, well, okay.
Well, I appreciate the subversion of the subversion because when she's introduced and she says she's saving up for her funeral, we as audience members should click into the fact we should think, okay, so the film's going to die. She's going to die, but she's going to get the funeral she wants. That's our subversion.
We want that, yeah.
That's the initial subversion you would expect. And then to have to subvert it further and showcase that she doesn't even get that. The tragedy is she doesn't even get the funeral she wants.
No, and then she's exhausted too. She works the streets. That's the last scene that the construction workers say, you want to tie,
Yeah.
and you realize she's not making a sale and she's tired, and then that happens. Almost one of the most violent scenes is the ex-boyfriend and Gene Peters.
Oh yeah,
when he throws her around the room, and I always look at it, I go, why is that so effective? There's very little camera movement. He allows the characters to bounce around, and it's horrendous, but he lets the camera still. A lot of times people like that shaky cam and cut and violence, but he just sets it and let you go bouncing all over the room. It's one of the most violent things you ever see on movies.
Yeah, it's that bloodless violence where the violence is almost inferred. I mean, like you see it, but like the pain and the damage and that kind of behavior is almost inferred because maybe that's part of it again too, is that convenience factor of if I zoom in, I have to show the violence. I have to show the bruises. I have to show the outcome. This way, it's kind of an open-ended. Yeah, like the camera's there, so even the cameraman's not present to go save her. Right. It's just a camera sitting in a room videotaping this horrendous act.
Sam always loved stunt people. He always paid them more than their rate. And I think that was another reason. He liked, and then he goes, when I usually write my stories, I think what we can use stuntmen for. And he would, how many days we get them and what we use for a stunt. So, yeah, you can't hear the close-up because I don't think it's actually Gene Peters.
Might not be her either.
But, yeah, even out in the street, on the subway and everything, the violence, throw it all bit around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, a fast cutting. You get Richard Whitmark. He's hot. He just came from the Kiss of Death, I think, from the movie. But he plays this oily, very charismatic anti-hero who's got a smart mouth, but, streetwise and smart mouth. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate his character. He's probably the least interesting of the main set, I guess.
It's interesting
because
how he lives rather than who he really is.
Yeah, the code. I wish we would have, if we'd spent any more time with him, it would have been. I would have preferred to see more of his code of ethics and his
who he interacts with. More.
How he exists on the fringes, because as a and like he's an obvious pickpocket in the way that he does it, but he was so on the nose about staring into her face as he did it.
You're so hot,
obvious.
baby.
Yeah, well, even like when she's trying to figure out who did it. She figures it out pretty quick. It's that guy that was staring at me on the subway, It's not like he's particularly great at what he does. But he has this kind of underground society that he's a part of and how he's been able to skirt around people. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that because I think that, you're right, when we look at Thelma Ritter and her character Mo, we get like the mythology of her character. Yeah. We get to see what she does for her, I guess, her day job selling ties, and then her like secret job of selling secrets. We get that. With Candy, we know that she's a former prostitute and that she was kind of hung up on this guy for a while now. She's escaped. Like we get all that kind of mythology about their characters, and I feel like
with Skip
we don't get as much.
Yeah,
he's kind of a necessity.
If I had a nitpick, I would like to see somebody on the street that does him that rivals him. Because I think somebody like pickpocketers, Sam talking about, they're very territorial too. It's like being the gangs, the Crips, Crips and Blood. You don't go through their territory. Drug dealers, this is my corner. And pickpocketers were very much like that. At the time.
Because most of the time people have boring day jobs where we don't want to watch someone pushing buttons on a computer from 9 to 5. But Skip is stealing money to survive. I feel like that's one of those I'd like to see his 24-hour look like. What does his day look like? How does it break down? What are the segments of it? That would have been something nice to dive into.
It's fascinating. It's all about this piece of microfiche film that they're selling to the communists.
Yeah.
And who at the venture like, oh yeah, that's forgot. This is what we're. Someone's like Alfred Hitchcock movie North by Northwest. Oh, that's right. We're supposed to be looking after this roll of film.
Someone pulled into the drive-through and asked for a McGuffin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I forget about it. I don't. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
this piece of film.
It's certainly a part of the film where it's the ball that gets rolling, and that's about it. But that's that's something of the time too. Is like the MacGuffin was almost like an iconic thing, ever since like things like Maltese Falcon, and then like diving into Hitchcock's realm where there was always some sort of MacGuffin.
Yeah.
We'd get that kind of development where it's a piece of history, it's a niche piece, but it doesn't have really a whole lot of bearing on the film. It's really just to get the fight going between these multiple characters.
Sam Fuller also likes to do a little bit of exaggeration with other, like, very side characters, like, very exaggerations, like Leighton Louis, who sits at the Chinese place.
Yeah.
And, listen, Leighton Louis, that's my name downtown. What's my name uptown? He's got all these different variables.
Or how he denies who he is at the beginning, but then he's got a guy he can call over who can tell him who he is.
Yeah.
He had very stunt mad Mike from the Grindhouse films kind of feeling to him.
So Sam likes to amplify not the central characters. He likes the core of the central characters, but he likes the exaggerations with those very supporting kind of things, even with the FBI and the cops kind of outlandish.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that even, as I pointed out, Tarantino would pick up and do in his films a lot too, is his main characters were slightly more believable, and it was always kind of the exterior characters that popped the scene.
Yeah.
So, with Tarantino, it was always the exterior characters that would basically ruin the story. With Fuller, they're more in there to just kind of provide information, and it could be boring information, but when you reply it with pop and, with kind of integral circumstance, it makes the film feel like they're giving information a lot easier.
So if you like Sam Fuller movies, I recommend Crimson Kimono. Did I say that right? Crimson Kimono, which is about a racist Japanese cop falling in love with his suspect white woman. Oh my God! How did he get that?
Start again.
Yeah, a racist Japanese policeman falls in love with the woman that he's a suspect for a murder. I do like that one. Check out Shock Corridor. I think that's available. It's considered his masterpiece, and that's when the journalist wants to see how people are treated in mental institutions, so he fakes a mental crisis to get in there, and then trying to get out. It's that classic case. Okay, I'm just here to investigate. I don't really need to be here. And then nobody, believes him until he finally goes insane as well.
Yeah.
That's Shock Corridor. Which is funny thing at the end of it, the 20th Century Fox says, oh, you built that set? We want to use it for a different movie. And Sam goes, the hell with that. So he flooded that whole set at the end so that wreck it so nobody else could use it.
I mean, I wish I had a job where I could just destroy sets.
Oh, we're going to use that set for another movie. Ah, the heck you are. And then I recommend Steel Helmet, which is kind of a lone wolf and cub kind of a movie. You have this guy in the Korean War, his platoon, his battalion, or whatever, gets all assassinated. He's on his own, and he finds this little boy in the woods, and he's trying to get back to where they're supposed to be. But if you like that lone wolf and cub kind of thing, Steel Helmet's very much like that. And
Watch
so those
Sam Fuller's Mandalorian. Okay, cool.
Yeah, pretty much, right, man. His Mandalorian, right, yeah. So, and that's our take for Sam Fuller. I hope you want to see more of Sam Fuller.
Yeah, I'd like to dive a little bit more in. As I've always said, like, this kind of stuff is not my specific wheelhouse, but I respect and enjoyed the film. I liked what I saw. And again, this always sounds like a bad thing, but I really do like films that knock out a good story in 80 minutes. It's possible, it's doable. Not every movie needs to be a Babylon, and this is definitely one.
Don't need a catchphrase.
Yeah, I love that it just moves beginning to end. There's no pause, no filler. It just cruises, and I respect that. I like that this is a film that you could watch 10 times in a year because it's not one that wears you out.
Exactly.
Some movies wear you out, and this one's, beat for beat, an entertaining and exciting film. So
yeah, put it down in the comment below which other movies of Sam Fuller's you would like us to see us review.
Yeah.
If you like other of Sam Fuller's films, maybe something other than 1953 you'd like us to critique, put a comment down below and see us our suggestions.
Yeah, we'd love to see your suggestions down there. Our favorite thing is talking to the fans. Yeah, talk with us, we'll talk with you. And you can.
That's your best New Yorker.
Right. But yeah, make sure please check out those links down in the description while you're down there commenting. Please like and subscribe. They don't cost you a dime, but man, they really do help out the show, and they make us happy. They make us feel good.
Exactly.
So thank you guys for joining us, and you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And what does Richard Widmark, he says my favorite line of all time, are you waving the flag on me?
Yeah, that's what Hoover didn't like either.